Ahoy, it's Peter from Bryter Training, and look, I just want to take a couple of minutes to have a chat about what you can do to affect genuine change if you find yourself having a conversation with someone, either online or in person, with someone who has very, very different views than yourself, or are really set on their ways and really not very informed or educated. So this is really going to be more of a general opinion piece rather than one of our more formal educational videos than we do. Maybe a bit controversial, maybe a bit confronting, but the intention is, as always, to give you some practical tools that you can apply in these situations. We like to use something called positive disruption. So positive disruption is that sense of unease, that resistance you feel that normally precedes a radical breakthrough or a major change. So it can be a really good thing, but just prepared to be a little bit challenged in how we think. So, what's happening at the moment? I'm seeing a lot of information on Black Lives Matter, but interestingly, I then see almost counter responses such as, well, all lives matter, or it's a human rights issue, or it's not just Black Lives Matter, but Indigenous Australian lives. It gets applied to businesses jumping on the bandwagon as well and talking about their support and what it means to them. We've got general topics of support, and then we have a complete opposite perspective, which is where people start bringing up the criminal history of people involved and how it's not what it looks. So basically what I'm saying is we've got a whole bunch of different opinions out there. The question isn't who's right and who's wrong, because the reality is everybody is right. I'll explore that one further on. But the real question is, how do we reach consensus? Where is it we're trying to go? What's the endpoint we're aiming for? What's the most efficient, decent way of getting there? So in order to do that, first thing we need to probably understand is understanding society's values in general. So any society will have an overarching general set of values that they apply, which everyone will generally, it'll dictate how people feel or respond to particular situations or events, communities. And it's based on the historic journey of that culture. It's based on time. It's also based on something called educational critical mass, which is when you get enough people who become aware of a topic and who agitate for a particular response, then you'll see a change in society. So to give you an example of that, we can go back, say, to the 70s. Have a look at the difference in the way the gay community was treated compared to how they're treated now. So there's still, of course, quite a bit to go, and certainly in a lot of different countries. However, there is a huge shift in what was acceptable in the way we treated the gay community back in the 70s and 80s versus how we treat them now. And events took place such as the Stonewall riots and a lot of other protests and other events happened that changed society's views and changed what was acceptable. If we go back another decade or two, we can look at women's rights, the right to vote, the right to have a career, the right to reproductive rights, all sorts of things there, how we treat them in general. Again, there's more work to do. But you can see that society allowed or considered it acceptable to treat that group in a certain way, which thankfully that has somewhat changed now. If we go back further again, and we can see examples all the way through time: slavery, racism, political correctness. 100 or 200 years ago, it was okay to duel each other if you were offended. Go back 500 or 600 years ago, and if someone offended your subjective view of your honour, you could pull out your sword and challenge them, fight them to the death. So my point really is that social values, what we consider appropriate, changes over time based on the scenario, based on the individuals and the education and that critical mass. So what's the difference then between the societal values and individual values? And that's really what the conflict comes down to. When it comes to an individual point of view, we all have our model of the world, and it's based on either what our personal experience is or how we were raised, how we were educated. Most of the time, people don't question their own beliefs. So what we believe is true about a group of people or a lifestyle or anything at all, we don't even question where that belief came from. And we just assume that we're right and everyone else who disagrees is wrong. But then let me give you some more extreme examples. Think of a prisoner of war. If someone is tortured or goes through a really traumatic experience during war, they're probably going to have a very specific opinion of the culture, of the race that held them captive. If you think of a sexual assault survivor or a rape survivor, they're probably going to have a very specific opinion on the gender that perpetuated the crime. So, and for something a little less extreme, if you were bitten by a dog once, chances are that you can look at all dogs and go, oh, they're all aggressive. Because in your experience, that's what it means. So look, some of these beliefs are consistent with the majority of society, and some of them are not. And some of them will be in alignment with what you think, and others will not. I'm not saying they're right, I'm not saying they're wrong, I'm simply saying that's what they are. Everybody has an opinion based on their view of the world. And the reality is, no one has the right to tell someone that their experience is wrong. But there are things that we can do to change people's minds and to affect major change across society. And also keep in mind, a minority opinion doesn't make it wrong. Massive societal changes have taken place from a minority who have gone out there and educated and agitated for change and got the message out there. And we've seen some major changes that have taken place on a global level because of that. So what are the things that we can do if you find yourself having conflict with people? So first things first, as we said earlier, is recognize that different people have a different opinion. You're allowed to have a different point of view. That's okay. Absolutely allowed to. But respect the fact that other people's experience may lead them to have a different point of view as well. And forcing someone to have your point of view, all it does is cause conflict. People go out of their way then they'll get defensive, and they'll go out of their way to find evidence why they're right and why you're wrong. When I see posts online with people saying things like, if you don't believe X, then you're part of the problem. I'm sorry, but I think no, you're part of the problem. You're not empowering, you're not educating people. All you're doing is judging and attacking other people. That is not helpful. So the next thing that we can do is stop reacting and start analyzing. Often you'll see videos out there and there is no context. I can guarantee that if you've seen a video on the news or on YouTube, that there won't have been a little section at the end that had a nice balanced interview with everybody that was in that video asking for their point of view and their perspective. Half the time they're edited or they're cut so that it just shows a particular event happening that supports a particular way of thinking, a particular model of the world. Again, I'm not saying that that's right, I'm not saying that that's wrong, I'm simply saying if you can be open to being analytical and asking questions, it helps you get the full picture and it helps you be a lot more rational. And that leads on to the next point, which is acknowledging someone else's opinion doesn't mean you agree with it. We can accept that other people think differently without compromising our own values or our own point of view. So you also don't know someone else's experience that led to where they are. So we really don't have the right to attack or question anyone just because they think differently to us. So what can we do about it? The final thing is meet them where they are and lead them to where you'd like them to be. So this means take the time to literally step into their model of the world, find out what their experience is, question them on where their beliefs come from. If it's a belief that they picked up from their parents or their teachers, it might be a real eye-opener for them to realize that it's not their personal belief, it's just something they were always told. They might be open to learning new things. So take the time, educate people, share new experiences, share your journey and share your experience and your examples. And it can really enrich someone else's view of the world. It can really help them grow and them change. And that's how you affect change across society. So on the point of educating and sharing experiences, look, I can remember when the marriage equality vote was happening in Australia, and I'd sometimes have people say, why all the noise about it? Like, I know lots of gay people, they're living out there, they seem to have the same life as us, so what do you mean equality? And then when it finally passed and we were able to get married, I then had people go, so great, you've got equality, why am I still hearing about it? So what else do you want? And what they didn't realise was that being able to marry didn't stop discrimination, didn't stop violence, but from their perspective, from their model of the world, that's all they saw. So they didn't know my personal experience, and as a result, they had opinions that clashed with mine. It doesn't make them wrong. They're right based on the small amount of experience that they had. They're right based on their context. So me challenging them, me attacking their point of view doesn't help anybody. But being able to share my personal experience is a much better way of helping somebody see that their part of the world, their view of the world, is just a part of a much bigger system. And that's what we forget. Our model of the world is not the whole planet. Our model of the world is one of 8 billion different realities on the planet at any given time. So ultimately, that's what it comes down to, is just respect other people having different opinions. Black Lives Matter in no way says that no other lives matter. Equality for same-sex couples doesn't mean no equality for anyone else. It's not pie. There's plenty of equality to go around. Everyone can have it. So just because you don't agree with something or don't have a personal experience with it doesn't mean someone else is wrong. Also doesn't make them right. So again, it applies to both sides of it. So personally, I believe that there's like a universal set of, values, morals, how people should be treated. However, I recognize people are made up of their experience and their education. And that's okay, but the best way to affect change then is to understand people's experience, to be willing to meet them, be willing to listen, and then empower and educate and share our stories. At the same time, minimize the damage done by those people who are just not willing to listen. And those people are always going to be there. And we don't want to spend too much time getting stuck on that. Let's work with other people who are willing to help us and willing to really change the world for the better, and continue to role model the change that you want to see in the world. Sounds a bit cliche, but I just really, really believe that. But instead of adding to anger and judgment and the ignorance that's out there. So thank you so much for listening. Look, I hope it gave you a few tips, insights into how people think, and some things that you can do if you do find yourself just having a bit of conflict with other people and different ways of seeing the world. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, your experiences, so please leave some comments or feel free to contact us directly. But thank you so much and have a great day.